Sinatra, Anka and me. Hi, good morning, Neil Sean here in the heart of London. Hope I find you well today. Thank as ever for your company, it's really appreciated. And as I say, I want to thank you also for all the kind comments after I shared a very recent story about my recollections of meeting Dodi Al-Fayed, the former paramour and squeeze of the late Princess Diana, and of course just memories in general. It's nice to hear your thoughts, and of course it triggers off so many other people's memories too, isn't it? That's the thing about memories though, I don't know if you think this, but when you look at a picture, of course, or some footage in my case, and you remember interviews, your memories are totally different to the person, of course, that you're interviewing or you're stood with. We all have different memories. That's what's fascinating about being in life, don't you think? So today I was sort of recently looking back through some old pictures and I came across that sort of picture. That's when I interviewed the wonderful, yes, I think he is, Paul Anka. And we met him at Grosvenor House Hotel. He was over here doing promotion for a big Las Vegas show, brand new album, you get the picture. And of course I was a little bit nervous, to be honest, because Paul Anka for me is one of those superstars, that really has sort of been around, done everything and had so much success. But what a humble, nice, sweet man. Really friendly. Over breakfast we ended up having such a laugh together, and sadly I don't own that footage, so consequently I can't actually show you the full interview. But what I can show you, of course, is this wonderful picture that we had taken after the event. One of the questions though that I do remember, and listening to the audio, that I was fascinated about, as I'm sure you are, was the sort of origins of the story about how Frank Sinatra didn't like possibly one of his greatest hits, and that is My Way. Well, Paul told me his version of events, so I thought I'd share it with you. I thought this particular event was kind of fascinating because as a songwriter and composer and lyricist, which of course is what Paul Anka is, he was kind of known really for pop hits, that sort of stuff. Of course, Paul had had one or two major hits in the latter part of his career, but he was looking for that next big break. And he found it, he told me, when he was listening to a little known French song that didn't have English lyrics. He thought it was a nice ditty, but he wasn't quite sure what he could do with it. Now, one of his all-time favourite singers, as I'm sure many people watching today, is none other than the wonderful Frank Sinatra. Now, I've been lucky enough to meet Nancy Sinatra and Frank Sinatra Jr., but sadly never Frank Sinatra, which is slightly annoying. Lots of people that have known him I have met, including, Jack Lemmon's son, Jack Lemmon, Dean Martin's son, Sammy Davis Jr., you name it. But never, sadly, Sinatra. Just missed him. Here's the story that Paul recounted to me. Basically, Sinatra said, look, I'm really keen if you could write me a song. I'm really keen, can you come up with something? And Frank Sinatra had started his own record label at that point, Reprise Records. Do you remember that? Now, what's interesting is Paul said he just couldn't find the thing, wasn't quite sure. And because it was Frank Sinatra, really wanted to be sure that he was going to present the very best song. Anyway, it moved on and Frank announced one of his very intermittent retirements. Rang Paul up and said, well, that's it, I'm going to retire, I'm through with the game, it's all sort of dying off, the Rat Pack's finished, blah, blah, blah. The usual diva antics that you get with singers, I should know, I am one. Anyway, back to the story. Then, as I say, Paul found this folk song and decided to put English lyrics to it. Well, as you know, the rest is history. But what I did ask Paul was this, like when he presented it to Sinatra, what did he say? And apparently Frank rang him up because he'd sent a demo and he said, you've done it, I'm not now going to retire, I'm going to record this. But the folklore story, including that from Nancy Sinatra herself, was that Frank actually hated the song. Well, according to Paul, that was totally different. Paul apparently, according to him, said that Frank saw this as a bit of a rebirth. I mean, you've got to remember, we're coming to the end of the 60s, the Beatles and Flower Power are over, but it wasn't necessarily an instant hit. It was a slow builder, a bit like New York, New York, in the latter part of Frank's career. What I thought was interesting though was Nancy Sinatra always goes on record saying that Frank hated it. Paul tells me that was a totally different story. In fact, yes, Frank got fed up from singing it from time to time, but what singer wouldn't when it's such an international hit? So, according to Paul, Frank loved it, and according to Nancy, he didn't. But whichever way you think about it, Frank Sinatra's version of My Way has to be one of the most popular songs ever in the last 100 years. And it continues to get played on radio around the world, making, dare I say for Paul, thousands and thousands of pounds in royalties. And I think for that, Paul Anka is certainly grateful to Frank Sinatra for recording it. Now, a little bit like Yesterday by Lennon and McCartney, My Way, did you know this, is the second or possibly now first most recorded song by any other artist. An incredible feat when you think about it. I hope you enjoyed my memory of My Way. I'll see you soon. Neil Sean in the heart of London.